I was about to throw away weeks of work. I just wrapped production on my latest horror short film, The Call of the Dead.
Si tu ser amado te hablara del más allá, ¿contestarías?
After hours and hours on location, I finally checked the footage and realized that the audio for my short film was a total disaster. What? Everything was noisy.
Pues sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no? Y sí.
Sometimes the dialogue wasn't even understandable. It was unusable, or so I thought. But then, after thinking, I figured something out that changed everything. It's an AI trick so powerful, I think I found the secret to saving any damaged audio. And let me explain how I did it, because this might save you too.
Hey, Rebel Filmmakers! Reynaldo Cantu here. Welcome to the channel.
Well, now that you've watched it, let me tell you, I started researching ways to save it and discovered that, at this point, there's no magical AI tool that's foolproof, that's all-powerful, and can save everything, especially audio like this. But then I realized something extremely interesting. I thought maybe I could try combining different AI techniques and tools to save this audio, because if not, I'd have to re-record all the dialogue. The first thing I thought was that I needed all the audio to be at a good volume because sometimes the dialogue was super low in some parts, and sometimes an actor was louder than the other. So, first, I wanted to level out the audio. This can sound confusing, but it's pretty simple. I used Adobe Audition, but you can use any software that lets you edit audio. I exported the audio per scene and turned up all the dialogue parts that were way too quiet.
Pues sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no?
Pero ¿quién va a hablar a las 3 de la mañana? Es más, ya nadie habla por teléfono.
Here's the idea. We're trying to create a consistent sound wave, bringing up the low parts, even if it still sounds bad.
Pero ¿quién va a hablar a las 3 de la mañana? Es más, ya nadie habla por teléfono.
Pues los bancos sí hablan, sí lo sabré yo.
And why? Well, I realized something important. Most AI tools for removing background noise need to hear clear, loud voices to recognize and isolate them better.
And I try skipping this step, but it always works better if I include this step.
Step 2. Artificial intelligence in action.
The second part of this formula is where the AI kicks in. This is where the magic starts.
I used Audo Studio to analyze and repair the audio. This tool can detect sound patterns and recover dialogue that seemed lost in all the noise.
But noise cancellation, noise removal, noise suppression, noise cancellation, noise removal, noise suppressions.
In my opinion, Audio Studio is one of the best tools for removing background noise, but this was a huge challenge. Could it save audio this bad? Well, that's what I was about to find out. So I imported the leveled audio to Audio Studio, and wow, the result was incredible. It removed all the background noise.
Pues sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no? Sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no?
Sure, it wasn't perfect, but the difference was huge.
Pero ¿quién va a hablar a las 3 de la mañana? Es más, ya nadie habla por teléfono. Pero ¿quién va a hablar a las 3 de la mañana? Es más, ya nadie habla por teléfono.
But without the next step, I would have been missing the most important part of the process. Because even though the audio no longer had as much background noise, it still wasn't completely usable.
It still wasn't optimal. I couldn't use that audio like that. But then I had an amazing idea. And here's where the next tactic could make all the difference.
To perfect everything, we go to step 3, where I used another AI tool called Adobe Podcast. This AI is like a wizard that takes audio recorded at a distance, with a lot of noise, and transforms it into something that sounds like it was recorded with a studio mic. It's amazing.
But could it save these dialogues? I was about to find out.
So I imported the audio I exported from Audo Studio into Adobe Podcast.
Before you ask me why I didn't just import the audio directly into Adobe Podcast and skipping the first 2 steps, I'm going to tell you why, but I'm going to get to that in just a bit. First, let me tell you what happened and how I did it in Adobe Podcast, okay?
So, I imported the audio from Audo Studio into Adobe Podcast, but I wasn't too happy because the studio effect was way too strong. It sounded like a podcast.
¿Qué si se quiere comunicar conmigo?
And with the free version of Adobe Podcast, you don't get controls to adjust the effect intensity. It applies it at 100%. And in most cases, that's fine and will work perfectly for you. I use it like this for YouTube videos, and it's perfect, especially if you want a more voiceover style sound.
But for the short film, I wanted to sound more natural. So in the paid version of this tool, Adobe Podcast lets you control the effects percentage. And that changed everything.
At the moment, I don't have the paid version, so I can't show you the process, but that's what I did. So with that control, I set it to 80%, which I found to be the sweet spot for these particular recordings. This will vary with each audio. Your project might need a different percentage, maybe more or less. It's all about experimenting. So I set it to 80%, ran the program, and
wow, it was like the skies cleared, the clouds parted, and the sun came out. The audio was completely transformed. It was awesome. It's amazing what it's possible with AI these days.
Pues sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no?
¿Y si...
¿Sí qué?
¿Y si es Mario?
Pues sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no?
Sí.
¿Sí qué?
¿Y si es Mario?
Adobe Podcast helped adjust frequencies, balance the volumes, and gave the voices that cinematic clarity I was looking for.
And about what I mentioned earlier about not importing the audio here directly without doing the first two steps.
If the audio has a lot of noise and the voice isn't clear, it simply doesn't work. The program even starts to invent words. It's hilarious. But in this extreme case, nothing worked until I did it exactly as I explained here in this video.
And finally, I had an audio track that I could use. Since the original audio was quite damaged, it didn't end up perfectly clean. But with the sound design, music, and everything else, I think it sounds pretty good.
Pues sí está raro, pero a lo mejor se cruzaron las llamadas o algo así, ¿no?
Sí.
¿Sí qué?
¿Y si es Mario? ¿Qué si se quiere comunicar conmigo?
Both Audio Studio and Adobe Podcast have free versions that you can try them out. And if you want to learn about a tool that mixes music, voice, audio effects, all together with just one click using AI, you should watch this next video. It saved me a lot of time. You can watch it here when it's ready. I'll see you in the next Rebel Filmmakers video.